There are disappearances that begin with chaos, an argument, a wrecked car, a scream in the night, a door left open, a final phone call that sounds wrong. And then there are disappearances like this one. A house being cleaned, a father expected home from the hospital, 2 men outside working on a car, and a 20-year-old saying he was just going to put away a pair of jumper cables. That was Branson Perry in Skidmore, Missouri on April 11, 2001. And according to public case summaries, he stepped outside during the afternoon to return the cables to a shed or nearby area and was never seen again. Because at first, it sounds too small to become permanent, too ordinary to become a mystery, the kind of thing that should resolve itself within an hour. He steps out, he comes back. Or he doesn't, and someone sees where he went. But Branson Perry did not come back, and what followed was not clarity, but drift. Delayed alarm, broad searches, eerie details inside the house, terrifying theories, and years of uncertainty about whether the truth had been missed in the very few first hours. Public summaries say that investigators later searched widely, interviewed many people, and still failed to find Branson or a definitive explanation for where he went. A young man steps outside to return jumper cables, and then somehow he is gone. For good. Tonight's case takes us to Skidmore, Missouri, a tiny town that has appeared in more than one American true crime story for all the wrong reasons. But this episode is about one disappearance and one question. How does someone vanish in broad daylight during a routine errand and leave behind almost nothing except rumor? Branson Perry was born on February 24, 1981, and was 20 years old when he disappeared from Skidmore on April 11, 2001. Public case summaries also note that in 2022, the county sheriff said a suspect had been identified, but that more evidence was needed before an arrest could be made. This is not a case with a clean ending. It is a case made of pressure points. A normal afternoon, a missing stretch of minutes, a house that didn't look right, a town where everyone seemed close to the story, but no one close enough to solve it. What makes this case memorable is not only that Branson disappeared, it is how he disappeared. The case says Branson was at home on West Oak Street in Skidmore, cleaning the house because his father was expected back from the hospital. A friend was helping him. 2 other men were outside working on his father's car. At some point, Branson reportedly said he was going to return a pair of jumper cables to the shed, stepped outside, and never came back. That is a devastating kind of last known moment because it strips away the dramatic signals people rely on. No one hears him announce a risky plan. No one says he seemed frightened. No one marks the afternoon as strange. He's not leaving for a trip. He's not storming out after a fight. He is not walking into some dramatic unknown. He is doing a task, a boring task. The kind that vanishes from memory almost as soon as it happens. And that is exactly why this case is so unsettling. Because once the last act in a story is ordinary, the disappearance itself starts to feel impossible. It asks you to believe that something enormous happened in the middle of something so small. Branson's case is also shaped by place. Skidmore is not some sort of town people imagine when they picture a disappearance that stays unsolved for decades. Small towns create an illusion of visibility. The assumption is that people notice things. Cars look familiar. Strangers stand out. Movement leaves a trace. And what breaks that illusion, the whole case takes on a different kind of dread. Public case summaries identify Branson as a young man living with his father around the time of the disappearance, in the wake of family changes and ordinary life disruptions. What stands out in the public record is not a portrait of someone vanishing out on the margins, but someone still moving through everyday life, chores, family needs, and local familiarity. That matters because it changes the central question. This is not just where did Branson go? It is how did Branson disappear from here? In a place small enough that people should have noticed, in daylight, during a task short enough that he should have been back almost immediately. And if the answer is that someone in Skidmore did notice something, then the case becomes more haunting still. Because that would mean the truth was not invisible, only unspoken. Let's slow the day down, because cases like this are often lost when they get told too quickly. On April 11, 2001, Branson was at home, reportedly cleaning, in preparation for his father's return from the hospital. Public summaries say a friend, Gina Pig, was helping him. Two men were outside working on his father's car. Then Branson said he was going to return a pair of jumper cables to a shed. That was the last known explanation of where he was going. If a friend is nearby, other people are outside, the task is short, the distance is short, the risk appears low. So if something happened to Branson in that window, it had to have happened fast. And that creates two broad possibilities. Either Branson left the property more intentionally than people first realized, or something interrupted him almost immediately. A voluntary departure would mean he changed course with no clear explanation and without leaving behind a convincing trail of preparation. An involuntary disappearance would mean that the event happened with startling speed and in a setting where other people were physically close. Neither version is easy, and that is the final real pressure point in this case. Not rumor, not suspects, not later twists, just the simple problem of timing. One of the strange features of the Branson case is that the alarm did not appear to arrive all at once. Public case summaries say that on April 12, Branson's grandmother stopped by the house and found it unlocked and deserted, which she considered unusual. She reportedly called the home over the following days, got no answer, and eventually contacted Branson's mother, who also had not heard from him. Branson's father was discharged from the hospital later than expected, and the formal missing person report was not filed until April 17. That gap matters. Not because the family did anything wrong. In real life, disappearances rarely announce themselves clearly in the first hour. Adults move around, plans change. People assume someone is with someone else. The normal explanations get used up before the frightening one is allowed in. But from an investigative standpoint, delay changes everything. The first hours after a disappearance are when the movement is the freshest, memories are the sharpest, vehicles are the easiest to trace, and the difference between odd and critical can still be acted on. By the time Branson was formally reported missing, whatever happened on April 11 was already beginning to cool. And in many unsolved cases, that is the moment the future starts to harden. Not when the person vanishes, when the clock finally starts. Sometimes a case becomes unforgettable because of one detail that should not matter, but does. In Branson's case, that detail is the jumper cables. Public summaries say that when investigators searched the property, they were initially unable to locate the jumper cables Branson had supposedly gone to return. Then, about 2 weeks later, the cables were reportedly found just inside the door. That detail is eerie for a reason. If the cables were the reason Branson stepped out, where were they? If they were not where people expected them to be, what does that say about the last movement? Did he begin the errand at all? Did he return to the house and then leave again? Were the cables simply overlooked in the confusion? Or did the story of the cables become larger than the object itself because it was the only concrete thing left to hold on to? This is the kind of detail that can drive a case for years. Not because it proves anything on its own, but because it destabilizes the final known action. If the cables are misplaced, then the timeline may be thinner than it sounds. And if the timeline is thinner than it sounds, then Branson may have vanished even closer to the house than people realized. After Branson was reported missing, search efforts followed. Public summaries say Nowadays County authorities organized ground searches within a 15-mile radius of Perry's home, covering fields, farms, and abandoned buildings. They interviewed more than 100 people in the weeks that followed. Despite those efforts, nothing produced a clear resolution. Branson was not found, and no simple explanation emerged. This is where the case starts to feel less like a disappearance and more like an argument, because broad searches usually help clarify at least the category of what might have happened. Did someone leave on purpose, have an accident, meet violence, or get in a vehicle? In Branson's case, none of those possibilities settled into something stable enough to feel true. Instead, the case lingered in a frustrating middle ground. Too little evidence for certainty, too much unease for an innocent explanation, and the middle ground is where rumors thrive, especially in a small town, especially when everyone feels adjacent to the missing person's life, and especially when the disappearance itself is so plain that people start to believe the real story must be hidden behind it. This is the darkest section of the case, and it has to be handled carefully. Public summaries say that in 2003, investigators identified Jack Wayne Rogers, a Presbyterian minister later convicted in unrelated violent and sexual crimes, as a possible suspect in Branson Perry's disappearance. He was never charged in connection with Branson's case and denied involvement. Public reporting summarizes on Wikipedia says the investigators became interested in Rogers after discovering disturbing online writings and evidence in unrelated investigations, including a post they suspected might describe Branson, though Rogers claimed it was fiction. Public case summaries also say a turtle claw necklace resembling the one Branson owned was found in one of Rogers' vehicles. This is the kind of material that can overwhelm a case, because once a possible suspect is attached to horrors that are already proven elsewhere, the mind wants to rest the line up. And maybe it does, or maybe it doesn't. That is the difficulty. Rogers was never charged in the Branson Perry's disappearance, denied involvement, and public case summaries note that Branson's mother later said she no longer believed Rogers was responsible. So, this part of the case remains suspended between terror and proof. Too disturbing to ignore, too unresolved to treat as an answer. And what makes it dangerous in both directions? Dangerous to dismiss, dangerous to overstate, but its presence changed the case permanently. Because after Rogers entered the narrative, Branson's disappearance stopped feeling like a local mystery and started feeling like it might be attached to something much darker, stranger, and harder to contain. Time did what time does in unsolved cases. It took people away. It changed who was alive to answer questions. Public summaries say Branson's father died in 2004. His mother, Rebecca, later offered a reward for information and died in 2011 after a long illness. The case remained open through all of it. Public summaries also note later searches, including a 2009 excavation near Quitman after what authorities described as a credible tip, and say no remains were ever found. That is the brutality of unresolved disappearances. The missing person is not the only one frozen in the story. Everyone around the case becomes trapped in a different way. Parents wait, grandparents search, friends age. The town learns how to carry a question without ever setting it down. And still, there is no body publicly identified as Branson's, no prosecution, no final account of what happened between the house and the rest of that afternoon. Then, in 2022, according to public summaries, Nowadays County Sheriff Randy Strong said investigators had identified a suspect, but needed more evidence before making an arrest. That statement changed the emotional shape of the case because it suggested the answer might not be lost, only unfinished. So, what is the real mystery here? Not only where Branson Perry is, that is the obvious. The deeper one is this: at what point did an ordinary afternoon become a crime? Was it the moment he stepped outside? Minutes later? Did someone call him over? Did he get into a vehicle voluntarily? Did he trust the wrong person? Or did someone seize an opportunity so narrow that the whole case still feels impossible? And then there is the question beneath those questions. Who in that town or around that town knew more than they said? Because cases like this rarely survive on invisibility alone. They survive on silence. Not necessarily organized silence. Sometimes it is weaker than that. Fear, doubt, gossip without testimony, suspicion without courage. That belief that someone else will come forward first, and if the sheriff's 2022 statement is accurate, then somewhere inside the years of noise, investigators may have finally found a line that leads somewhere real. But until it becomes evidence strong enough for court, the case remains what it has long been: a man stepping outside to do something forgettable and vanishing into one of the most memorable disappearances in modern Missouri true crime. Branson Perry was 20 years old when he disappeared. Missouri authorities still list him as missing, and public case summaries continue to describe the same unsettling beginning: cleaning the house, returning jumper cables, gone. What makes the story last is not the spectacle, it is the contrast. A routine chore against permanent absence, a tiny window of time against decades of uncertainty, a case that sounds at first like it should be simple, and then never is.